Good evening. Welcome to another If You Don't Mind. I am Lynn Kelly. I'm a licensed mental health counselor. And this is Jean Ann Moses. She's also a licensed mental health counselor. First, if you don't mind, we'd like to apologize for the delay this morning. There was something that came up unexpected. So, delay is not denial. We are here. And we last week when we came on, we talked about the dysfunctional family. In the dysfunctional family, there were many roles. And so somebody reached out and said, can you do something on the scapegoat? Because that was really interesting and they really stuck to that. So this evening, Jean Ann and I, in this mental health awareness month, you see we have on our green, if you don't mind, we'd like to talk about the scapegoat and the mental health implications of the scapegoat. Now, when we talk about the dysfunctional family, there are many dysfunctional family groups, such as your work group, it could be your church group, it could be community groups. Dysfunction can be in all of those groups, and everybody plays a role in that dysfunction. But the scapegoat seems to stand out a little bit more. So this evening, we would like to go over that. Jean Ann, would you like to say anything?
Welcome everyone. I'm Jean Ann. I just can't wait to dive into this topic. I think, in the dysfunctional family, because of all the things that happen, people recognize the scapegoat. Oftentimes, we don't use that word. We call you the problem one. You're the problem child. You're the one that when everything happens, you may not remember or think about it in that way. You're always in trouble.
Mhm,
No matter what happens, you begin to understand your role and you accept it.
mhm.
And the thing that's most interesting is how it carries on into adulthood and into other relationships, including work
Yes.
and and marriages and so forth. So I look forward to talking about that because I think it's the healing process because you're learning to set boundaries, right? Part of the biggest part is learning to say no and standing up for yourself. But we'll get into that a little later after we finish diving into more of an explanation of what it looks like and feels like. We're always told that didn't happen. Scapegoats always heard
Mhm,
it didn't happen to you.
mhm.
That's not what happened. You're the one that's always bullying. You're the one that created the problem. And you believe that role to the point that you carry it into your work environment. And you sometimes do create the chaos because it looks familiar, it feels safe. And so when they dump, yes, it's not clinical, but that's a real word. When
Mhm.
people dump and they tell you stuff, you kind of accept it to the part of the shame that it makes you feel. And a lot of times you become very angry and you become that may appear to be a bully because you don't feel heard, and so you try and seek that way out. I'm really excited to talk more about this. I identify with it at the end of the day. I'm not even ashamed.
Yeah. So, if you don't mind, let's get to it. So, let's talk about the scapegoat. The scapegoat in a family is typically the member who is blamed for problems, as Jean Ann said. They're blamed for problems, dysfunction, or conflict. And if you look at it within the family, the dysfunction and the conflict, you're the one that's causing that. And that is embedded in you. When something happens, okay, they're going to blame me for it because that was me all the time. I was blamed for things because I was that little wild child, as they would say. So even within the family system, uh, you know, when they are not truly at fault, you're still blamed. And you pick up that role. And what happens with that, there are common traits of the family scapegoat, and you're blamed unfairly for things going wrong. You're often labeled as the troublemaker or the problem child. You may be more emotionally honest or sensitive, which can threaten a dysfunctional system. Sometimes the only one who speaks out or questions toxic behaviors. Often isolated, criticized, or even alienated from the rest of the family. You go to your room. You know you always cause problems. Just go to your room. Do you remember those times, Jean Ann? Okay.
I And I don't think it's not just your immediate family, the family of origin, but it extends throughout the whole family
Hmm.
because it becomes easy, right? It becomes easy to look at one person
Hmm.
because when you're looking at them, the truth is they don't have to look at themselves. Now,
Yes.
let's be fair. Being a scapegoat doesn't mean that we don't make others scapegoats because
Mm-hmm.
sometimes people think if we're talking about it that we don't do it. But it's a natural thing that happens after a while. I think in that realm and in families, in dysfunctional family, you begin to pick it up, and it imprints on us, right? It imprints on you from the foundation. A lot of things are in utero. It starts from there, and that was a child that wasn't wanted, or it was a child that was wanted, but when it comes up, they can't constrain the child, and so now it's a problem. Instead of them really looking that child is a gift,
Hmm.
right? That
Hmm.
that child has something to bring, and sometimes the child is, if we're going to bring faith into it, the curse breaker, the generational shifter.
Hmm. Hmm. Exactly. And it's needed. That child is needed, but the child doesn't have that role at that time as being that curse breaker. That child is accused of everything and labeled. And where do those labels stick? Right here. They stick right there. And they're carried through life, as you said, in other relationships. So, why this happens in dysfunctional families, particularly those families with narcissistic or abusive dynamics, scapegoating helps the rest of the family avoid looking inwardly. You know, they don't look at themselves, they're going to go ahead and blame you for it. Okay. She did it, he did it, whatever. By projecting blame onto one person, the system protects itself from having to confront uncomfortable truths. And one thing Jean Ann always says is speak your truth. And the dysfunctional family sometimes will protect that family unit by blaming you. So it also has long term effects on you, the scapegoat. Low self esteem, chronic guilt or shame, trust issues, mental health struggles such as anxiety or depression, difficulty with boundaries in relationships. You don't know how to draw them because you're always blamed for everything. So you're like, okay, why draw them? I'm going to get blamed for it if it doesn't work out anyway. And then, in contrast, another common role in dysfunctioning families could be the golden child. And that's uh, the one who is idealized and held up as the example. So that golden child, sometimes can do things to the scapegoat. So remember that. The scapegoat um, does affect the well being of the individual and other relationships and when they get older. So think about that. That family scapegoat often extends well into adulthood and in your other relationships. So think about it. Your family relationships, your school age relationships, your early relationships with a boyfriend in high school, middle school, whenever, because these days children are entering into these relationships earlier and earlier and earlier. And you think about that, and it affects their emotional health, their behavior. And that is one thing where they may show out sometimes because they can't handle that capacity up there. And the individual may carry unresolved trauma. This can cause trauma in your life, and it's unresolved, and you carry it from year to year until you get some help with that. Distorted beliefs about yourself and unhealthy relationship patterns. And that comes from labels. So we have to make sure that that doesn't happen. And when you look at the scapegoat, how it affects the well being in later life, low self worth and chronic self blame. They may internalize the family's judgment and believe they're inherently bad, wrong, or not good enough. I don't know how many times the scapegoat does that. It's all my fault. Stop blaming yourself. Stop blaming yourself. It's not you. But what happens, you internalize it and you turn it around. You have trust and attachment issues, difficulty trusting others or forming close relationships due to past betrayal, or emotional neglect. How many times have you ever, I don't trust anybody? Well, why not? Well, this happened and that happened. Could it be that scapegoat syndrome? Could it be that dysfunctional family that did that, that causes you not to be able to trust? And then you might develop anxious or avoidant attachment styles. You avoid certain attachments because you're scared. You get anxious. You don't know whether to trust that attachment or not. And then you can struggle with intimacy or fear of being vulnerable, expecting rejection or blame. And I don't know how many people are afraid to be vulnerable in relationships. And you know, with counseling, the first thing I do, I said, this is a safe, vulnerable environment. You're safe to be vulnerable here. And that kind of takes that anxiety off of them and allows them to be vulnerable. Then they have people pleasing or conflict avoidance. They won't even stand up for themselves. You know, they'll please or go along with the other person to avoid further rejection. Scapegoat individuals often become hyper vigilant, over agreeable, or self sacrificing. And you know what? That can't be. You either speak up too much or you don't speak up enough. I remember growing up, my father used to always say, if you believe in that one thing and you're the only one that believes it, you stand up for what you believe. But a scapegoat can't do that because they fear that rejection. They fear of being ousted and ostracized because of it. They may find it hard to say no to assert themselves. That's something. Also, they put other people's needs above their own. You know, in a relationship, you have needs that should be met, and you want to make sure that your needs are met. So you're able to say, I need, I want in the relationship. And that is very important. I'm going to stop right there. Jean Ann, would you like to comment on the trust and attachment, the low self worth, chronic self blame, or people pleasing or conflict avoidance of that scapegoat? All of those mental health um, issues that come on just because of that scapegoat mentality.
I think oftentimes it becomes easy to accept blame in all areas. However, your reaction to things, it's not always docile.
Hmm.
With fight or flight,
Hmm.
give as good as you get,
Hmm.
because you want to be heard. When you do become silent, what happens, and you'll notice this oftentimes, you become quiet because you feel nobody can hear you. They don't want to hear you. Um, they will turn what you've said. They'll flip it and say, "Well, you always do that. You did that. You yelled, so I can't hear you. You're always coming after someone. You're doing X, Y, and Z." And you're like, I would say for me, I took it for a long time. And it was one day because it's your story, right? Because here's the thing, we tell our story, we live in our story. The story is what goes on between our ears, and the story is what happened to you. It's your truth. Everybody has their truth. How I perceive something, may we could be in the same place and not perceive it the same way. The consistency is though when everybody attacks the the one they have relegated to scapegoat, even though it's not called that, they always find the same issue. And they find the same issue because it makes them safe.
Hmm.
Um, the scapegoat will always apologize. You'll ever notice that you're apologizing excessively, taking ownership of things that are really not your fault, but you really believe it after a while. You believe this, you believe the shaming. You at some point you act out. A lot of times people don't, there may be signs of addictions
Hmm.
because you didn't know how to manage your voice. You don't know where to place that pain, that trauma, that grief. And
Hmm.
it is a lot of grief because to be rejected by who is your family or who you choose as a partner or who you choose as friends, it's a very hard pill to swallow because we like to say in the world out there, if everybody's saying it, it has to be
It's
true.
true.
No, it's not.
Hmm.
It's not.
Hmm.
We hear a lot of things and we know it's not true. it's a thing we call group think. It's a thing when you bully someone, we tell children not to bully, but the bullying starts in the house. And it happens to members of the family. You could be the mother, the father, the children. It doesn't just happen to the children. A parent can be bullied because everybody's like, but the parent knows that role. They're used to that chaos. They're used to the family telling them about you, and everybody's coming from different places, and you accept it. Then you go to work and then you become angry and you act out. And the boss says, "Well, why are you always acting this way?" And you don't understand the why.
Mhm. Mhm.
You
Mhm.
don't understand. You say, "Well, you were saying so and so because you." And I say this. I really like this point. Look at the people that you're with and what triggers you, and close your eyes and imagine who they're like in your family. Who is the person you're having a problem with?
Mhm.
And sometimes that's the way you work through it.
Yes. Yes. Exactly. It and it's also role reversal, you know? Be the parent who is calling that child the scapegoat. And that can also let you look at your behavior and what you're doing to that child or that individual. And it's so important. There's also overcompensating and rebellion. Some overachieve in an attempt to prove their worth so they can be noticed. Others may rebel or act out due to repressed anger or invalidation. Everybody needs that validation. And if you don't get that, you will do things in order sometimes to get the attention needed. Attracting toxic or narcissistic partners. You know, with this type of scapegoat, you may be subconsciously uh, recreate familiar patterns by entering relationships with partners who are controlling, emotionally unavailable, or abusive. And the familiar dynamic is being blamed, overlooked, or criticized. And it could feel normal to you to be in a domestic violence situation because this is the behavior you're used to. This is what you grew up with. So, when he or she calls you a name or, degrades you, that's normal for you. And it's so hard. So, mental health struggles, scapegoat individuals are at a higher risk for depression, anxiety, complex PTSD, which is complex post traumatic stress disorder, substance use, or addictive behaviors. And that is a way that they deal with their emotional pain. Being the scapegoat has emotional pain with it. Sometimes a parent will say, "Well, I know they switched her in the hospital," or, "I was a breech birth." So my mother would sometimes say, "Your feet came first. I think some air, some oxygen lost because I don't know why you do the things you do." So, things like that, Jean Ann. Can you identify with any of that?
I'm a loud mouth. I'm a loud girl. I'm from Brooklyn. I'm loud. They say, "No, you're not loud." I'm loud all the time. And so
Yeah.
they try and silence me.
Yes.
And for the longest time, I used to sing a lot.
Hmm.
And I
Yeah.
stopped because, and you'll notice it's your gifting. If you're an artist, I love to sing. I'm not a professional, but I do.
But you're so good at it, Jean Ann. You have that voice that is
Mm,
just, oh,
thank you so much. But they
beautiful.
silenced it. They silenced my voice like they've always silenced my voice. And the truth is, after a while, I silenced my voice because I didn't think they cared, right? And the interesting thing is that you stop caring about yourself on a certain level as well. You fight for yourself, but you become afraid to understand like the why. And I know it may be going ahead, but one of the things I started doing, which was very helpful to me, is I had a lot of resentment to some folk, lots.
Mhm.
Like I just couldn't stand them, period, right? It is what it is. But I looked at why I resented them. And after I did that work and what they did to me, and it's the thing I do continuously, is which helped a lot in my healing, is the role that I play. And when I'm clear I didn't play a role, via con Dios, as my friend used to say, go with God, because I'm learning to say, I've said no. And I started setting clear boundaries for myself. I can't set boundaries for you. And everybody says, I'm going to set a boundary for them. You can only set a boundary for you because you only live between your ears. What they do, they say, you go no contact.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Sometimes you have to do that to save your life.
Yes. Yes. Definitely.
You, I prayed and asked God to show me. I asked God to show me me.
Mm-hmm. Yes.
I also went to people I trusted to find out what was valid, right? Because you begin to find a tribe and you begin, I don't want to leave my family. I have this friend. Sometimes it means in that pruning season to help you grow, to heal, he removes you from them.
Mm-hmm. Yes. Yes. Isolate you. You're all by yourself, but you're not by yourself. You're with him.
And he sends new people.
Yes, he
And
does.
as they become to come in, you begin to see you in a new light. Mine
Yes.
started through therapy.
Mm-hmm.
My therapist at the time, we were talking, and I remember to this thing. She goes, "You sing." I was saying, "What do you?" She says, "What's your good? What do you do well?" And I said, "They say I can sing." She goes, "You can sing," and I sang something for her, and she recorded. She goes, "That was amazing," and that was in 2016, 2017. Excuse me. I just started going back to school, and I never stopped singing to this day. And what that did was give me back my voice in a different way. And over the years, you may shift, but here's the key: understand you're doing the work, they're not.
Yes.
And
Yes.
they want to remain to keep you who they see you as. And oftentimes the family is splintered,
Mm-hmm.
and oftentimes the scapegoat is ostracized into adulthood. And so they don't know you. They know you at the age that they lost saw you, and they continue to treat you the same way. You're old and grown.
Yes.
But they
Yes.
want to treat you like you're 6 or
Mm-hmm.
you're 15 or the years the major abuse has occurred with you, right? They want to keep you stuck, to keep you in remembrance. But you've elevated. And when you start to elevate, they become afraid. But you're not elevating for them, you're elevating for you because
Mm-hmm.
you have to heal, because your gift is to fall in love with you the way they didn't love you the way you needed.
Yes. 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 That is so true. You mentioned some things, when God isolates you, he searches you. Search me, Lord. If you find anything that shouldn't be, take it out and straighten me. So the spirit of rejection, that's not of God. All of these spirits, God will start delivering you from one by one, and you start to feel lighter, and you start to let that heaviness go, but you have to go, and you should let that person know how you feel. Forgive them. Forgive yourself for feeling that way, and forgive them, because that's the only way you can move forward. Have you done that? Did you find that to be true?
Sometimes it's not safe for you to go back.
Yes.
And
Yes.
it's okay to acknowledge that, right? I never understood when they'd always say you have to be okay with them not saying I'm sorry.
Hmm.
You have to be okay with them not acknowledging what they did. And I get it, because it's not safe.
Hmm.
It doesn't matter if it's not that they're not going to hit you, it's not safe for your psyche. And so you may need to write that letter to them and spew all the things you needed to get out, because really it lives between your ears. And when you see it through your adult self, it becomes clear in a different way.
Hmm.
And you don't need it from them.
Hmm.
And guess what they start doing? They get on their pony and they giddy up over to you to roll you back in.
If you let them, if you allow them, because remember, you're
Right.
not that same person.
Amen.
So you have grown. And that is what you're able to validate yourself. Once God
Amen.
cleans you out, you are able to validate yourself. And I get excited talking about it because, once He delivers you from all of that, you're in a different lane. You are no longer in this lane, you're in a different lane, and you're moving at a different pace. And it is so awesome how he surrounds you with new beings. And one thing you
Amen.
said that's so important, and I use this in grief, sometimes you're not able to say goodbye to a person. So we have a goodbye letter. And it's good for you to write down all of those feelings and emotions. In therapy, we get things up and out. And it's a good way for you to sit down and write down everything as you're getting it up and out and put it in that goodbye letter. Now, you can choose to mail it, you can choose to put it away and look at it later. Whatever you do with it, that's on you. But the key is you're getting emotions up and out. And that is what that is all about. Sometimes we have to formulate our own closure on things because of emotional pain. It's so deep. And as we're being delivered, we don't want to go back into some of those traumatic areas. Also, EMDR, and we both do EMDR, eye movement desensitization, reprocessing your trauma through eye movements. And that is another way to help with the scapegoat. Would you agree, Jean Ann?
I do agree with it. I do like one of the parts that I like is called the butterfly, and I
Yes.
think one of the things is that, and
Yeah.
it's the
I
doing
love
of this, and but this
Yes.
what it does is help to reduce the trauma. And as
Yeah.
you're patting and you're talking to yourself, Glenn is doing a form, and I'm
Mhm.
doing a form where you have it by the throat, and what happens is it helps you to calm down.
Yes,
It
it does.
helps you to recenter. It helps you to see truth. It helps you to, we say the body keeps the score.
Yes.
It doesn't show up the same way. So you may fall down and I may fall down and I laugh, ha ha ha, it's funny for me. And you fall down and you're screaming, right? But it wasn't something that happened today. It
Yeah.
was something that happened 50 years ago or 20 years ago or 5 years ago, where it came back to you in your body and it reacted.
Yes.
And so with this trauma, what happens is that as you start to do the introspection, it's not going to look the same.
Not the
It's
same.
not going to sound the same. The
Mhm.
words may trigger because it hits the body in the gut
Yes.
where
It
it
does.
feels familiar and you
Yes.
become reactive. And
Yeah.
what you do with the EMDR, it helps you to calm down. I like to do the butterfly and to help people to rock because when you're somatic and you're really present with your body and you're
Yeah.
feeling and you're doing it, it helps to calm, you're
Yeah.
self regulating, but you're also realizing you're safe. You
Yes.
get to make you feel safe because you are safe, right?
Mm-hmm.
A lot of times it's the story.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
It doesn't, and it doesn't matter if they don't believe you.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
You know your truth. Sometimes we heard things through the ears of a child, and so we internalized it because sometimes as adult, and now as an adult, we're slick. We say things, you're being funny, but the child who's already been ostracized or felt to be made ostracized feels it differently, and they carry it on. You get to change your story.
Yes.
Cognitive behavioral therapy, where you reframe.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
You look at it through a different lens. That sometimes those parents that did that stuff, they were dealing with their own stuff.
Yes.
As far as we know, this is our first go around. And you learn as a parent that you do the same thing, right? We do it. We're human. But you reframe and you look at it through a different lens.
Yes.
It wasn't about you. A lot of times it was their mess
Mm-hmm.
that they had to dump somewhere.
Exactly, exactly. And you find that when you go to therapy. And my therapist, one thing I liked about her, she was transparent. She gave me just a little bit that I knew she had walked a mile in my shoes. So she wasn't just sitting there telling me this. She knew, she was empathetic. She really knew where I was and what was going on. And as we're both clinical trauma specialists, so as we talk about EMDR2, trauma is stored in the body. And as Jean Ann was saying, when we're tapping, we're bringing back that trauma. It doesn't all come back at the same time, and it doesn't come back as you think it will. Sometimes it comes back in fragments like stained glass. I want you to picture a church window, and The stained glass window is so beautiful. Well, your trauma can come back that way in a stained glass fragment, and then tomorrow another fragment, and you're putting the pieces together. So, when we talk about healing and breaking the cycle, therapy, trauma informed therapy, especially the inner child work or EMDR, can help unpack the early wounds. And the inner child is the child within us. And we have to heal that inner child because that inner child is there to protect us. But sometimes we don't need that inner child interfering at times. So we just talk about that therapy and trauma informed therapy, and both of us do that. It's a little different when we do it with the military because they have different type of trauma, and I deal with the military, so their trauma is a little bit deeper. Um, Reparenting, learning to meet your own emotional needs and self-compassion. That was deep, meeting my own needs. I was looking for someone else to meet those needs for me, and learning that I could meet my own emotional needs, that was something that was deep. Boundaries, learning to set healthy boundaries, especially with toxic family members. Learning, you dropped your book on that one. With toxic family members, you don't have parents. Set the boundaries. Set the boundaries. Protect yourself and your emotional well being. Community, finding supportive, validating relationships that do not mirror the dysfunction in the past. You do not want a revival of your past. So if there's a red flag right there, keep it moving. Keep it moving. Don't enter into that. Boy, bye, girl, bye. Whatever you need to do, change your lane in a safer lane. If it mirrors that trauma from the past, do not enter into that. And sometimes you'll enter into it and then you'll pray for this. And God is like I showed you. He says, like I put it in your face. What did you not see? So remember that the next time when those red flags are there, do not enter, do not pass go, do not collect the $200. Keep it moving. And then education, understanding family roles and dysfunction. Remember, there are family roles, and we went over the scapegoat and we went over the golden child. So there are some books out there. There's one by Susan Forward, The Drama of the Gifted Child and Toxic Parents. Go on Amazon and just download it to your Kindle and look at these books, and they may help you. If you think that you have been the scapegoat, you're not alone. You're not alone. Many people go through this and they do find healing. The first step is recognizing the pattern and knowing it wasn't your fault. You know, knowing that it wasn't your fault, you were just the label because they couldn't deal with their own stuff. I like to call it ish. They couldn't deal with their own ish, so it was projected on you. It's time to let it go. Let it go. You're no longer that little child that is in that situation. Send that inner child away. You're a grown up now. You can validate yourself. You can validate your emotions. You can take care of yourself. You can get into therapy. It's time. I don't care what you call it, a counselor, a coach, a therapist, whatever. It's time. Let it go. Prayer also works. Surrendering to God for Him to come in and cleanse is wonderful. And when He does it, don't be afraid. Don't be afraid. He does it one piece at a time, one piece of you at a time. As Jean Ann said, He isolates. He wants you all to Himself. And He keeps pouring into you. You're my child. I created you. You are wonderfully made, uniquely and wonderfully made. You're beautiful. You're my queen. All of these things. If you're a man, you're my son. These are the things. Pick up your cross daily and follow Him, and He will take care of the rest. Jean Ann, would you like to say anything about this?
Sure. There's another thing. It's a 12-step program called Codependence Anonymous.
Yes.
Because
Wonderful.
oftentimes people who struggle with the title or the name of scapegoat or whatever the problem child, whatever it is, you tend to pick up codependent behaviors
Hmm.
where the people pleasing, all those things, the low self esteem. You get to be with like people, but you get to work through the process as well. I do think that works well with therapy. I will say something that I feel about that inner child as well, right? It's telling that child that they are safe
Hmm.
because your 5 year old self, you're 15, you're 18, the 25, but when you're that young and to those different ages, the years that you didn't feel safe,
Hmm.
you get to tell that child in the healing process, you know what? 5 year old me, Jeanette, you're okay. You're safe. You've made
Yes.
it.
Hmm.
15-year-old me, yes, you messed up in school,
Hmm.
but ultimately you made it, right? You
Hmm.
you you did successful careers. You've done this. 20-year-old you, every part of you and the mistakes you make, you get to tell that person that they're safe and that they're okay. And it's the story we tell ourselves.
Yes.
And maybe we did do things. Maybe we did trigger them. Maybe we did, but we get to change our story. We
Yeah.
don't need to live, we don't need to put baby up on the shelf. And
Yes.
we don't need to throw the baby out with the bathwater.
Hmm.
Find somebody safe and talk to them. I'm going to say one thing about therapy. Um, if you work for somebody or you live in a house, check out EAP. Don't think it's too expensive. We'll get our nails done, our hair done. Make yourself a priority. Your mental health is the most important thing. But employee assistance program, ask your company, do they have that? Call your insurance. You may not realize that they have that you may get some sessions for free. I'm a big advocate of it because you you get to validate yourself. You get to make the decision to heal yourself. Don't hide, right? The nails is not going to fix it. The
Hmm.
hair is not going to fix it. The chubby face is not going to fix it. You
Hmm.
feel me? Every business you create, you do business after business. But until you feel safe, until you believe you're the prize, until you take ownership for your life, it'll never change.
Yes.
You get
Yes.
to, I just have some affirmations I'd like to, if you don't
Oh
mind.
yeah, sure. I want that. One thing I want to say before the affirmations, you said something so poignant. You
I'm so
know,
sorry.
you have to take control of your life. Don't allow the narcissistic behavior or the domestic violence person to take control. They're all about power and control and manipulation. Be careful.
And I apologize. I have a coworker here. Her name is Brooklyn. She's a 2 year old doodle and she will bark. So I apologize. I tell
That's
my
fine.
clients in session, and Brooklyn may show her face here because she's a therapy dog,
Huh?
believe it or not.
Okay,
So,
that's good.
so here's an affirmation. I am not the problem. I am the pattern breaker. I deserve love without conditions.
Hmm.
I'm going to have you put this up if you don't mind on the
Yeah,
page
I
so they
want to
have
put
it.
it up. Yeah.
I set boundaries to honor my truth.
Hmm.
I'm allowed to take up space. My story matters. My healing is mine. So, when they try and tell you they didn't, that's none of your business.
Hmm.
None of your business.
Hmm. Hmm.
Because they always say this in church, when you die alone and you answer to God or whoever you believe in for yourself.
That's right.
Nobody else answers for you. So you know what? Your healing is yours. Don't leave this world unhappy. It
That's
don't
right.
matter if they have a doctor and you don't, because on the tombstone it says your name, the beginning, and the end.
Hmm. 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 It's so true,
Thank
Jeanette.
you.
It's so true. I love those affirmations. I love talking about what we talked about today because this is going to lead in to the next series, and we're going to do it on. We started with the dysfunctional family, and we're going to do it on domestic violence, and it's going to be a 4 or 5 week, series. If you know somebody, some of your friends that are in a situation, they're fearful, they don't know how to get out, please be on the show the first Saturday of June. I think that's June 6th or 7th, June 7th. And oh no, I think it's second or third, something like that. Look at your calendar because I'm not looking at it right now. But anyway, we're going to start talking about domestic violence and the ins and outs about domestic violence. Oh my God, there's so much. And that scapegoat usually finagles a way in or allows the narcissist or the abuser a way into their life. So please be with us the next time, if you don't mind. Gina, do you have any closing remarks?
I want to thank you for this opportunity to be able to share on this. And it's, by the way, June 7th.
June 7th,
Um,
thank you.
um, I think it is necessary in healing. I think it's important that we are honest with ourselves to start the healing process. I think once you start therapy and go in to do some of your healing, there's no need to be afraid. You have to be honest because it's your story. But start by setting boundaries. Um, Continue to tell your truth.
Hmm.
Live in your truth,
Hmm.
even when it's ugly and it smells,
Hmm.
because that's the only way you can clean it up.
Yes, yes. Thank you so much for those words of motivation and inspiring words. If you don't mind, I'd like to encourage you to start a prayer life. Read the word. The word has some great advice in there, scriptures that can lead you when you can't reach out to that friend. You can reach in your bosom and call on Jesus. He will answer you. And that's the last thing that I want to leave with you. So if you don't mind, I won't be with you next weekend, but the following weekend, domestic violence. Please make sure that you subscribe to our channel. We would really, really thank you. I really thank you for subscribing to the channel. We have some great things coming up, inspiring, moving shows that I want to share with you. So, Jean, thank you so much for being
My
my special
pleasure.
guest. You will be back because,
Well, thank
Jean,
you.
wherever you are, people always say, I like her. She keeps it real. That's what it's all about. That's what you go to counseling for, where we keep it real.
Oh, I keep
And
it
we,
real.
we're there to help you, not to hurt you. We're there to help you heal. So, anyway, until next time, if you don't mind, be safe, and we'll see you later.